We are just 1 month away from Passover. And remember, we have been going through 1 year of Passover. Do you realize that? And I was just looking at my notes, and last year, Adar, February 2020, I just came back from Australia, and then suddenly lockdown began. So we have been in this kind of restriction and in this kind of condition for almost 12 months already. So it's really a prolonged Passover, and the Lord is trying to form something within us. So that's why this is the month that we want to talk about the voice that is within. Now, the month of Adar is always about identity. Everyone says identity. So there is an identity inside you that is different from all the rest of the people, but out of it, there is a voice that must come out. So this is the month God can cause it to happen, okay? So once again, welcome to First Fruit celebration of Adar. So wherever you are, whether you are in other places, you are by yourself, you are with people in other cities, we welcome you here. You know, you can celebrate by yourself, but if you find a couple of people, it's always more interesting. So we're in the final month before Passover, and this is always the time God unleashing that identity. And sometimes you're like, I haven't been doing well and things like that. It doesn't matter. It's like you are at that point of time and God can visit. And I was just reminded of the one time God really visited me, and I came from Christian family. Ever since I was young, I was very sure I'm going to heaven. That faith is real, but it's not a very relational relationship. You know what I mean or not? You have a head knowledge. If people, put a gun on your head, are you going to heaven if you die today? You're like, yeah, I believe so. But there's no heart relationship. So in the midst of doing my own things, anyone ever done that? Doing your own things all the time, all of a sudden, God visited me. So that's the thing about First Fruit. All of a sudden, God can come. And it doesn't matter what has happened in the months prior to that, okay? Now, when we come to Passover, we always want to remember the Hebrew meaning of the year, 5781. Remember 5781, it is a season of contrast. Everyone say contrast. Contrast of what? The ways of God and the ways of dragon. Now, Passover, very interestingly, and I think most of us don't see it like that, it is what we call prophetic halftime. Because do you realize Nisan, after Passover, we are still 5781, right? So anyone ever got confused? How come it's a new year and we're still in the same year? It's because 5781 only 6 months. From the yearly perspective, we have gone through 6 months of preparation, but Nisan, God says, we will advance and prosper for the next 6 months. That's the meaning of Passover, okay? So that's why it's a prophetic halftime. So coming to Adar, the last month of the year, then Nisan, the first month of the year. Usually these are what we call months of acceleration, because it is a time where we can make decisions. That means if you have been away, you have been sluggish, I'm not saying that that's a good thing, because everything that we have done the past 6-7 months, it builds up, it helps us. But let's say you have not been following up, you have not been doing the things you're supposed to do, these are still acceleration months for us to proceed and to advance, okay? And we can make the decision to commit to the ways of God. Now, by the way, those of you who are watching this on YouTube Live, do sign up for our channel. The past 3 weeks, I've not been here. We don't have meeting last week. And the 2 weeks before, we have Pastor Joyce, we have Andrea. So I'm like just chilling around for almost a month. But I want you to just look at some of the teaching, look at the title, look at the topic. If it's something that it speaks to your spirit, do watch it. Sometimes I even watch my own teaching. Yeah, I watch my own teaching and I'm like, oh, did I say that? And I'm learning something from myself. So that's the thing, because when you are doing teaching, it's really the anointing comes, and sometimes it's not just what you are thinking and what you are preparing, okay? So if it speaks to your spirit, do go and watch it. The resources are tremendous, and just go and watch all these things, We had a great teaching on worship by Andrea the week before. Then Pastor Joyce did the Shield of Faith. So those are really, really good fundamentals, okay? Okay, so 5781, the year of Pei Aleph. Now remember this picture, we've been seeing that. Okay, so we are not finishing the year, because do you realize it's only 6 months since the head of the year? So what happened is 6 months for us to get into that prophetic understanding, and then by Passover, we really step into the meaning of this prophetic picture. So remember the decade of pay. Everyone say pay. So we are like, it's only like 1.5 years into pay already, and now it's the second Passover, 5781 coming out. And the whole decade is all about contention. And when Chuck Pierce came to Cebu many years ago, and he was saying that the next decade is all about warfare. And we're like, what kind of warfare? And specifically, the Borneo region will be what he called a theater of war. And we're like, yeah, we understand warfare, we can embrace warfare, but I think nobody could foresee what's happening in 2020 and what is happening right now. The kind of warfare that we are seeing within the church, within all the spheres of society within us. So 5781, it is, and the decade of pain, it's all about speaking against the lying and deceiving serpent. It's a red dragon. You know, recently, my whole family, we just finished Lord of the Rings trilogy, extended version. Then after that, we decided to watch The Hobbits. And, you know, I never watched The Hobbit, the movie before, because I just felt like it's not going to be very serious. You know? That's my prejudice against the movie. I know the book was very kiddish, you know, it's a children's book, which later on the author has to amend because of the story of the Lord of the Rings. It became serious. But I was very surprised. I was very impressed with the movie, actually. And now remember, in The Hobbit, the main bad guy was the dragon, right? And what is the weapon of the dragon? The weapon of the dragon is fear. Everyone says fear. What we are seeing right now is a spirit of fear everywhere. It's unbelievable. But as people of God, we have to stand up and speak against fear. That's why the voice must come out in this season. The voice, and I'm not asking you to be crazy, I'm not asking you to do stupid things, but I'm saying the spirit of fear must be limited. And our voice, the voice of Ecclesia, can speak against this lying and deceiving serpent and dragon. This is a decade to challenge your words. Did God really say? Remember, that's what the serpent used against Eve. Did God really say? So contention is all about fighting, and we're not fighting for empty things. It's to obtain glory. So that's why 5781, 6 months have gone past. The next 6 months, we must allow the apostolic voice to come out, because we need to contend with the dragon system. Now, if you watch Hobbit, the dragon did nothing. He was just sleeping all the time. But the spirit of fear was so powerful. People around it, for 170 years, nobody dared to went close to that place, because it is a spirit. Doesn't even need to do anything. So we pass over this round the corner. The Lord is bringing the full revelations of 5781. What is it about the apostolic foundation? What is it about our voice? We have to come to terms. You see, that's one of the things I've been saying a lot, and I want to say again, that we have to embrace it. We have to understand it. It has to be like fundamental, you know. It's like when you play sports, you know, we call it fundamental. It's like tennis. What is the fundamental of tennis? You know, I know Joel played tennis, and fundamental is what we call hand-eye coordination. It's like you can't even think about, I need to see the ball. Now, I know some of you will be like, what are you talking about? For people who never train, the first few times they try to swing, they don't hit the ball. Have you seen people swing and they don't hit the ball? All the time. So it's like the fundamental is not there. Have you seen people dribble? Basketball? Cannot dribble. The ball just fly away. So that's why the apostolic foundation has to be the fundamental for 5781. So God is bringing us to that full circle. For what? The voice of the Lion of Judah will be released. There is a voice, and ultimately it's the voice of God. Now, I just want to say to prophetic people, and you know, Joyce and myself, we often talk to prophetic people, and sometimes they're very stressed, and they're like, how to prophesy. Now, I remember when I first did MSG 2, 3, and 4, okay? And those days, we did it in 1 year, I remember, 2011. At some point, I can't remember. At some point, suddenly I got this revelation. Hey, it's not about me. And I started to be, not to say I simply do it, but I don't take it seriously. I don't take myself seriously. And ever since then, every time I go back to Cebu, people are like, prophesy to me, prophesy to me. So I'm like, okay, I just do it. It's like very natural and easy for me because I don't take myself seriously. So in the end, the voice of the Lion of Judah is the one that will come out. Don't take ourselves too seriously, but allow God to bring that voice out. So it's the same for everything, for healing, for marketplace, for word of knowledge, revelation, everything is the same. Don't take ourselves too seriously. Singing, playing, the instrument, etc., etc. Okay, so let's look at God's calendar. So where are we now? Adar, 2 o'clock. So we're going through 6 months, and just one more month, we're going into Nisan Passover. And the second Passover, I'm not sure if that will happen, but I really hope somehow travels will be allowed. Maybe we'll be meeting in Cebu again. I think we are heading towards that path, right? So are we able to do it? But of course, I was just talking to my wife, Lanshi, and we're like, every time we see news from Sarawak and Cebu now, of course, cases a lot. The word I use is there's pandemonium. You know what is pandemonium? It's like just panic all around. And I'm seeing my friends and things like that. And it's really anchored by that spirit of fear. But we declare that we will be able to meet soon. We'll be able to go back to the place because God desires us to meet corporately. And before all these things, we had the good news, right? Penang has direct flight to Cebu and things like that. So I don't know if all these things will be restored, whether travel will be like what it used to be. But that's our hope that somehow one of the major feasts will be able to gather once again. So that is where we are, Adar, moving into Nisan. Remember what I say, months of acceleration. Okay, I'll just quickly talk about the yearly versus monthly perspective. I already mentioned it, okay? So we have you see, Tishrei is what we call head of the year. That is where the number on the year change. 5780 become 5781. So that's the traditional numbering of the year. But then in Exodus 12, all of a sudden God told Moses, in the month of Nisan, that shall become the first month. So that means God changed time so that Nisan, from the monthly perspective, become the new year. So you sort of have the yearly and monthly perspective in terms of God's timing. So let's look at last year, head of the year, 5781. So that's last September or October. We enter into the new year from the yearly perspective, but we're going through 6 months, right? Tishrei, Sheshvan, Kislev, Tevet, Shevat, Adar this month. 6 months. Finally, we are going into Nisan. Passover next month. So 6 months period, what is it for? Get ready for Passover. What is it for? It is God's prophetic grace. Everyone says grace. Because there are issues concerning heart, mind, and soul. That is why it is such a great timing. We have FIC next week. So I want to encourage people, just take the opportunity. Everyone needs deliverance. Nobody is exempted from deliverance. In fact, the longer you don't do deliverance, the more you need to do it. It's like maintenance like that, right? Anyone ever stop maintaining your car for 10 years? Actually, I know someone who did that. And eventually the car is like, just not smooth. Something is wrong. So it is to deal with the issues concerning our heart, our mind, our soul. That's what deliverance is all about. Now, sometimes, when I was younger and we really don't have proper understanding of deliverance, what we think of is, the pastors want to catch me, wants to point out the mistakes. Once a year, bring some speakers, and that speaker has a strong word of knowledge and will call people out. Oh, very scary, I want to avoid. So that's a wrong perspective. You see, the right perspective is deliverance is between you and God, full stop. Trust me when I say this, people don't even remember. People don't want to remember because it's not their issue. It's really between us and God. So we have that perspective, we can fully allow our soul, our body to be healed and delivered. So at Passover 5781, we begin to move into the fullest dimension of the prophetic grace for that year. Because 6 months to prepare, 6 months. That's why, do you realize that the month of Nisan, and then the following month, Iyar, etc., etc. They are all the first 3 months are always like very, very fast and very, very positive sort of month. Because all of a sudden, the understanding comes and we are able to move on. Okay, so let's talk about first fruit for a little bit because today is a celebration of first fruit. This is something that is always my favorite time because I know no matter how the rest of the month has gone, if we are willing to worship God in the way He asks us to do it, He will sort it out for us. So some of us may be wondering, what if I've squandered? You know what is squander? I wasted all the months leading up to the month of Adar and Nisan. Some people are like that, right? They say, all the first fruit, the last 6 months, I didn't really do anything. Because remember, every first fruit month, there is a prophetic meaning. There is something that you can do. There is something that you can submit to God. What if I didn't do anything? This is a very Confucius mindset. It's like not very balanced. Maybe God will not allow me to go through to Passover, that kind of thing. Anyone ever thought about that? Come on, be honest. I'm sure some of you thought about that. Those who are very calculative, those who are very, you need to balance, and it's not balanced. So we need to remember the ultimate principle of first fruit. And this is the thing we have to remember. As we give our very best to God, He will sanctify the rest. So that's why I say it doesn't matter when you come in. If you have been terrible the last 6 months, but today you say, God, I want you to intervene, you know what? He will intervene. But I already say this kind of prayer is very dangerous, right? If you say, God, please intervene in my life, He will really intervene, okay? And it may not be what you want, but intervene, nevertheless, He will do. So it does not matter where or when we decide to enter into a first fruit celebration. That's why I remember Cain, after he didn't do so well, and God gave him a very good advice. If you do what is right, it's a conditional thing. If you choose to allow me to involve in your life, then you will do well. Did you realize that the initial word God told Cain is, you can do well? But he twisted it and said, you judge me. So that's the thing. It's really, sometimes it's the seed of our heart. It's the offensive spirit. It's the rejection spirit. That's why the rejection cause is so important, because it is roots and open door to many, many, many other things. So I really encourage you just to do this. The spirit of rejection cause, I think Joyce, you say only once a year, or sometimes not even once a year. Okay, so do take this opportunity because we won't do it again this year, okay? So we need to have the expectation that God will intervene and begin to reorder our lives. That's why I really love what Lyra was sharing just now. The way she gave her tithe is really a first fruit because she gave even before she knew what she would receive. That's really first fruit. I always hear Chuck say that, Chuck Pierce. The first time he said that, I'm like, what do you mean? Because one of the things he always says is, I give before I even know how much I will have. That's faith, right? That's a high level of faith. You really believe that God will provide for you. Okay, so let's come back to month of Adar. So it's a 12th month of the year from a monthly perspective, a month associated with the tribe of Naphtali. Now, I said many times already, first fruit, you have many resources. You can listen to Apostle Michel teaching on first fruit, which is usually very similar and close to time to advance, really good overview and all the points, all the prophetic things that we have to look for. Then if you follow Glory of Zion's, Robert Hyland usually teach, and he will be like focusing on the year, the prophetic meaning. And for me, it's like sometimes I do like time to advance. Sometimes I just hear one point that I need to highlight and I just go for that. So today is one of those things, okay? It's not a time to advance teaching. So I already said, I remember last year, the Adar first fruit was the first ever first fruit we couldn't meet. Just came back from Australia and we're like, how to do recording, how to do video and things like that. So, in 1 year, we have advanced quite a bit in terms of the ability to communicate with people. So that's one of the things. The identity has changed. God is bringing us through a year so that something will come out, something that is pleasing to Him. So we're going through almost 1 year of recurring lockdown. And actually, I have to say, Malaysia is relatively sane, S-A-N-E. It's not like crazy like some nation. We have relatively, reasonable lockdown, okay? But there's always continual restriction. So that's why God is bringing us now to a new place of expression and identity that will come out in Nissan, okay? So we already experienced a season of prolonged Passover because it's like the whole year is like Passover like that. We are like trying to get through to a place. We are trying to step into the identity of the pay season. So that's why the month of Adar, now is the time for the unveiling of the new identity that has been forged. So it's like no matter what you have done, 1 year, what is inside you and me, it will be exposed and it will be tested in this month. But do not be afraid, because remember what I say, even if you squander the last 11 months, today, if you say you're willing, God will still visit you and intervene and begin to reorder your life. Okay? So don't feel like it's too late. It's never too late. The grace of God is never late, okay? So Adar has always been a month associated with identities, with the unveiling of identities. Now, I already mentioned this. This is not something that just happened. It doesn't just drop from the sky, but it's a cumulation. It's a combination. It's all the efforts or lack of effort the past few months. So it's almost like it's a time of balancing the account, if you're from the accounting point of view. So the last 12 months have been tremendously challenging for many of us, right? But when we talk about favor, when we talk about blessing, it doesn't mean it is without challenge. It means in spite of the challenge, we prosper. Some people is like, oh, take me away from this, take me away from there. It's like, I think you have to move to the moon or Mars or somewhere, And so it has been challenging for us. It has been challenging to many of the cities I know. And it's not easy, and people are discouraged. We see some people no longer interested together as a tribe. It just happened. I've seen it so many times. Apostle Michelle, Pastor Joyce, we have seen it so many times. We just have to move on. Because we can't make people do things. We can't say, you have to do it. All we can do is we come alongside. Hopefully, we can encourage them to have a relationship with God. Hopefully, we can motivate them enough to want to hear from God. That's all. Nothing more. So don't take ourselves too seriously. But nevertheless, it is difficult when people are no longer interested together. We just have to move on. Then we see some people, maybe they're still with us, but they are disinterested to pursue their personal destinies. It's like they have a great potential, but they are like, just do whatever they want. So you see that a lot with sports people, and sometimes people with tremendous gift, and they could be so much better, but they are not. Because of whatever issues. Sometimes it's deliverance, sometimes it's effort issue, sometimes it's character issue. So we also cannot force them to do it, but we have to try to ask God, what can I do? Am I supposed to come alongside this person? What should I do? So that's why the voice of God is so important. Because if we cannot hear that voice, everything will be so difficult, and it will be like, should I do this? Should I not do this? Should I do this? Should I not do this? And some of us even, we feel the lack of motivation to advance. It's like, very lazy to come out, very fearful to come out. So I see some people say very fearful. Maybe if I touch something, maybe I get the COVID-19 or something like that. Now let me just say something about this, okay? If you get the disease, it's not because you touch something, it's because your body is weak. Yeah, it is true. You can't hide from all these things forever. The only place is you go to moon, you go to Mars. So this kind of thing is unreasonable, because this is what the dragon wants to do. In Hobbit, the dragon just sit in the castle and nobody dares to be close for 170 years. Until a wizard, a hobbit, and a band of dwarves decided to do something crazy. Talk about that. These are like, they are not even anti-hero. They are below anti-hero. It's just a joke, right? You watch them. But you see, in the end, it's a heart. It's a character. It's a perseverance. So that's why when you feel lack of motivation, just think about where do you want to be? Where do you want to be? Where do you think God is bringing us in? So that's why this is the month of Adar. There is that voice, there is that identity that has to come out. So the decade of Pei is supposed to be the time for the unleashing of the sound of the Lion of Judah. Remember, it's the decade of the mouth, right? Talking. So those sanguine people, those who like to talk a lot, they'll be like, oh yeah, this is my decade. I'm supposed to prosper. But instead, everyone say instead, our voice is being restrained. And then we see compulsory use of masks. I'm not against use of masks, okay? Not at all. But I'm just saying that symbolizes that restraint in the natural and in the spiritual. It has never happened before for such a prolonged time in the entire world. So in the natural and in the spirit, the enemy is trying to limit our ability to express ourselves. Did you realize something about the mask? When you put on it, people cannot even see the features of your face properly. And sometimes you're like, oh, is that you? Oh, yeah, that's you. Sometimes you don't even recognize people. Do you realize that? And then we're seeing unprecedented clamping down of freedom of speech, the voices of freedom and liberties by authorities and big tech are Google, Facebook, Twitter. You know, some of you may not know, but I am actually an IT student also, okay? I'm a law and IT student. Never practiced before, but IT is always my hobby, okay? And when I was in university, we look at this big tech as liberties of freedom. They are liberalizing the information sharing. And today they have become the Red Dragon. Anyone remember the days of Napster? Anyone use Napster before? Napster is the first global piracy, okay? And it's like, you can get anything you want. Seriously. It's like all the computers are connected and you just type whatever name, it come out and you download. And those days, the download is very slow, okay? It takes days and days and days, but eventually you get one series. It's not like now you're on Netflix, you get it. It's not like now you have 1 terabyte, 1 gigabyte internet line, and it's like, download 10 gigabyte, half an hour you get it. It's not like that. But those are the days the information was very free, but you can see there is now the clamping because the enemy wants to silence us. But God, everyone say, but God. So in this time, He will cause our voice to be even more forceful. Forceful. Everyone says forceful. Now, forceful doesn't mean loud. You can pray in tongues violently and quietly. Do you know that? You don't have to shout. If you're in a governmental building, don't shout, please. They're like, if you're in the court, don't do anything. Otherwise, you may get a contempt of court. But anyway, that's another topic. Okay? And so that's the thing. We have to be forceful because God is giving us a voice. You already have a voice. It's just a matter of how are you going to unleash it. You see, our voice is linked with our natural and spiritual identity. So some people are naturally chatty. Some people are naturally loud. Have you heard the expression human microphone? You know anyone who can come out here and speak and don't need microphone? Yeah, there are many like that. They are called human microphone, okay? So that's the natural part of us, but there's a spiritual part. The spiritual part links to your spirit, links to your identity. And when we study the Bible, voice is often used to describe the persona. That means the true identity. It is used to describe the authority. There is that voice. And the voice of God has authority, right? But sometimes the voice of those He delegated also have authority. The voice can even represent the conscience, the living conscience of the person. So let me just read to you a few verses, okay? The first one, Genesis 3:17. Now this is a sort of negative verse. Because you have listened to the voice of your wife. By the way, who said this? God said this, okay? So don't, okay? God said this, okay? So voice here, not just speech, but it is a proclamation. It is a decree. It has a legal effect. Now, when you look at the root meaning of the word voice in Hebrew, sometimes it is compared with thunder. Thunder. So that means it carries authority. There is authority. Eve's word has authority. Now, of course, Adam override that authority. Because do you realize one thing about the whole event? When Eve took the fruit, anything happened? Nothing. Because the one in authority has not fallen yet. But the moment Adam took the fruit, the whole thing crumbled. So Eve's voice had power and authority because of a persona. Remember, Eve was called the mother of all living things. And then there's a relationship with Adam. People are guessing how long after God created them for that to happen. Some say 20 years, some say 30 years, some say 50 years, some say 100 years. Nobody knows. But I believe certain amount of time have passed. It's not immediately. They were not totally immature. That's why they were without excuse. Okay, the next verse. Also something said by God. Genesis 4:10, same family. Somehow the first family has a lot of problems, okay? And the voice of your brother's blood is crying to me. Whose blood? Abel. See, the word here is the same Hebrew word used in the earlier verse. Same word. And here we begin to see the concept of the living conscience. The conscience of Abel continued to cry out. And it cries out for what? The administration of justice. I need to be avenged. That's why remember Hebrews 4:4 talk about, though he is there, he still speaks. Ever wonder about that? Because you see, when there is a voice, and sometimes, people who are so significant, you think about someone like Martin Luther King, even though he has been dead for so many years, his voice still resonates. You think about Lincoln, he's dead for so long, his voice still resonates. So we can see that voice is more than just a speech. Voice can be an active force that draws the line. So it draws a line, it allows us to differentiate right and wrong. Now, voice, of course, can be positive and negative. And sometimes you see very gifted people. By the way, do you know Hitler? Hitler was considered a tremendous communicator. And just, he has great oratory skill and things like that. So he used his voice for the negative because he was able to persuade people to support an evil cause. So coming back to the pay decade, it is a decade where we must use our voice. Now, it doesn't mean to speak only. It can be your writing. It can be things you do. It can be a project that you support. But all those are the voices that will cause us to release decrees because we want to be able to shift our surrounding. Okay, so that's the purpose of the voice. Okay, let's talk about a little bit about the development of our voice. How do we develop this voice? And we have to remember the first thing. The voice is part of our very core. It goes beyond our physical body. It goes beyond even the soulish realm. It goes into the human spirit. It goes into the conscience. So we need to differentiate spirit, our human spirit, and our human soul. Spirit is a part of us that is not physical, so you can't touch it. Not soul, so it's not emotion. So because spirit is not emotion, sometimes we don't get in touch with our spirit. You see, a lot of times people come here and they're like, I want to experience God. You know what they really want is they want to feel emotional. It's not about emotional. And when you experience God, sometimes you are not emotional at all. Very often, when I sense the presence of God in my life, there's no feeling. Faith has no feeling. Soul, on the other hand, is the seat of our emotions. It is the seat of our decision-making. It is the will. So it is a very, it's a part that we feel a lot. It's all about feelings and things. It's not a bad thing. Don't get me wrong. It's not a bad thing, but it's not the same as the spirit. Spirit is a part of us that yearn for God. Remember just how we sang the song? It's like we go beyond the soul. We go beyond the soul, and that's the spirit. And that is the part that has the ability to commune with God. So another way to look at spirit is it can be described as the intuitive part. Have you ever done something very intuitive? It's like, I just feel like I want to do it. That feel is not the soulish feel. It's like the intuitive feel. You know what I'm talking about? That goes beyond logical thinking. It goes beyond emotional expression. A lot of times people make emotional decisions. So Andrea, Tinting, and the team are doing the investment thing, right? So one of the things they always say is people can make emotional decisions. So emotional decision can be greed. They are greedy. Apostle Al, some of you know, he said one time investment, he made a greedy emotional decision. And he was greedy and he lost a lot of money. And after that, he said he has to just eat bread for 6 months. Yeah, seriously. Yeah, so that's the thing. Or sometimes the emotion can be fear. So they let go of things very quickly. Just dumb. I don't want to get burned, even though you already get burned. So that's why the intuition is beyond that. It's not emotion. Sometimes it's very hard to draw the line. But it's something that we can discipline, because prophesying is the same. You are tapping into your spirit that is linked with the Spirit of God. You are not tapping into the emotion. The emotion supports everything, but it's not the core expression. Actually, it's very hard to teach this, okay? It's like you just have to flow with it. But what we can say is, faith originates here. That's why there's no feeling in faith. And this is the part that is very important, because faith, at the end of the day, that is what will cause us to develop our own voice. They will develop something you want to say that will affect the world surrounding you. Okay, so let's look at this. Psalms 42 is one of the most famous chapters in the Bible, right? So everyone knows Psalms 42, right? And it talks about the longing of our soul. It's, oh yeah, please read Psalm 42 to me. Please read Psalm 42 to me. So some people the soul likes to be soothed. Nothing wrong. It's okay. We're in a challenging world, and there's our thirst, our need for living God. But you see, the first part of the psalm, it talks about the need of the soul, which is okay. But soul is not everything. And then it talks about the ability of God to deliver us. Very important. But all of a sudden, you realize in verse 7 comes this very important verse. Deep calls to deep at the sound of your waterfalls. I mean, those of you from the Spirit-filled, charismatic stream, they always use this verse for what? As a way to describe the infilling of Holy Spirit, right? Because waterfall symbolizes the abundance of Spirit. Water is Spirit. Waterfall is like abundance. Constant. That's why it is used to refer to the infilling of God's Spirit. And when you look at the term, deep calls to deep, the core word really is like spirit to spirit. It refers to the communion between our spirits and the Spirit of God. So that's why when you speak in tongue, you are talking to God. You are communing with God. Your brain still works. You can still do calculus in your mind. You can still do quiz in your mind, because you are not using your brain. And that is what gives us courage and hope in trying times. So the psalmist is like, oh, my soul, my soul, my soul. But towards the end, he suddenly realized, hey, I need my spirit to be fathered by God the Father. So that's why one of the most important aspects of the development of our voice is we need to allow God to father our spirit. So I think Chuck Pierce wrote an entire book on this topic. It's called Time to Defeat the Devil. And the way he described it is like this. Look, your spirit is safe because the Spirit of God and your spirit combine, right? The enemy cannot touch your spirit. That's why deliverance is always about flesh issue and soul issue. And when people when people are demon possessed to the degree that they lose their conscience and things like that, usually I believe the root cause is they were never truly safe in the first place. But nowadays, most of the time, you talk to them, they will behave. After a while. In the past, we used to tolerate people just do all kinds of things. But nowadays, if people are not cooperative with, okay, it's okay, you don't want it, I won't force you. Move on, next one. This is not bad, but this is talking about people need to take responsibility for their spiritual well-being. But anyway, Chuck Pierce was talking about the concept of vexing. So it's like your spirit is safe, but you can be vexed. So the example I always think of is, anyone ever go to, the Longgang underground? If there's a sewage hole you go in? Anyone ever watch Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle? They were there, right? So ever been there before? And it can be very dry, but it's like so smelly. You are not dirty yet, but you cannot stand it. This is what is called vexing. Now, I talk about my own experience in vaccine, okay? You know, when I was in Australia, and very early on, year 1, year 2, and after I have that encounter with God, now before that, you know what I do? You know, I'll be fooling around with all my friends, and one of the places we want to go is, the place we go most often is the casino. Yeah. Now, we don't gamble there, we don't have money to gamble, okay? But casino always, you know, casino is all about attracting people to waste your life. So they give you free drink, free food, free offer. In fact, one of my friends works in the casino as a chef. So he always say, come, 9 o'clock, come. There'll be all the leftover food. So we go there, but so that was like my home for 1 year. But after that encounter, I couldn't go to casino anymore. I felt vexed. And I remember a few years later, I came back and we were like going to Genting. It's like I said, I just want to go. I just want to go. It's that vexing thing. So that's the thing. It's something that your spirit is affected and it knows and it doesn't want to be. So that's part of the conscience also. So the communion with Father God, if we have that regular communion, it allows the human spirit to be nurtured in such a way, then eventually we will form our conscience. You see, conscience decides what you can eat, what you can do, what you can wear, what you can watch. You know, some people cannot watch certain movies and other people can watch old movies. It's a conscience. Now, I'm not talking about sin issue. I'm talking about things which are not sin. But it's the gray area. It's the borderline. The conscience must come into play. So it comes from the conscience. The voice comes from that relationship with God. So then that allows our core, our potentials to be unleashed, to be mature, and to be manifested in the places, in the spheres. God will call us to different places. Some people are called into entertainment mountain. Some people are called into the finance arena. Wherever we are called, that voice will be nurtured in such a way that it will help us to manifest. So it is a gift which the Lord has given us. Now, the past few weeks, you know, one of the person that I greatly admire, his name is Rush Limbaugh. I don't know if anyone ever heard before. He's called the Anchorman of America. And he once upon a time, he said this thing. Now, he just passed away last week at the age of 70. And he said this more than 20 years ago. The talent that I have is loaned from God. One day, I will return it. And he was like, his brother was a pastor, and you know, he was divorced a few times. He was wavering, but eventually he got saved. And that kind of changed his voice. Now, he did a radio show, 3 hours per day, 20 to 30 million people listen. AM radio. How many of you still have AM radio? I think some cars don't even have AM radio, okay? So that's the thing. That's the kind of voice God gave him. He was a Christian. Many things he said were very biblical, but he was talking it from a secular perspective, from a very covert perspective. So that's the thing. There is a voice, but nevertheless, that talent is from God, and one day it will be gone. One day we will die. So that's why we all have potentials. Everyone say potentials. So we all have great potential to impact the world. Not just, my little friends, my little family, but the world. There is a potential in a great and significant way, but not everyone chooses to walk in this path. Because remember what Rush was saying, our talents are loaned from God. One day it will be returned. So one day, you know what will happen? We will need to give an account to God. He will ask you, what did you do? What did you do with that talent? What did you do with that potential? What did you do with that voice? So that's why, remember the fear of God. Once we understand that we are accountable to God, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. Right? That's what the Bible says, right? Once we recognize it's someone greater that we need to give account, all of a sudden, we don't waste ourselves anymore. See, God desires for us to use our talents, our potentials to advance His kingdom. And this is a great time, a great opportunity, because so many things are being turned upside down. God is changing the very fabric of our society. So here's the thing to ask. Do we wish to be part of God's end-time triumphant kingdom forces? Because the month of Adar is a month of choice. The month of Nisan is a month of choice. And just now Joyce was saying, today it seems that the theme is Caleb. She started off with a prophecy on Caleb. And I sort of forgotten about that story already. Othniel, some translations say Othniel was a brother of Caleb, right? Actually, he was a nephew, okay? So Hebrew translation always like this: my brother, my cousin, my nephew is all my brother. So sometimes you have to understand the Hebrew grammar, okay? Because sometimes if you are a bit confused, just see who are their fathers. Not the same father. So very, very easy. So I almost forgotten about that part, but there is something, the thing about Caleb is very interesting is he knows what he wants and it's okay to pursue happiness. It's okay to pursue your heart's desire, and especially when it is given. So I'm just thinking about him and Joshua, before the first crossover, they were supposed to cross over. They went into the enemy's line. They saw the Nephilim's descendant. Remember? Everyone was like shaking. We cannot beat them. And Caleb and Joshua is like, no, we can beat them. We want to eat them for breakfast. So that's the thing. There is a choice. And even though they chose the right thing, the majority didn't. And it caused Israel to go into 40 years of wilderness. So I think it's the same for the church. There is a great separation that is happening right now. And we kept on talking about separation in the iron season and then pay season. But let me tell you, this is going to be real serious already. This time is real. This time we are seeing people really choosing whether they want God or not. So it's a very critical time. And we have to make a decision. We are indeed at the point of time in history where unprecedented things, you know what is unprecedented things? That means things never happened before are happening. So we are living in the greatest era of the ecclesia. Apostle Paul dreamt of this era, but he never get to see, because this is the time we can get the greatest harvest. It's just a reality. Just look at the number of population. We never had this number of population on earth ever before. And so many people are still not saved. So the potential for harvest is there. You see, heaven is preparing for the greatest demonstration of kingdom. That is why when you see manifestation, it is because the third heaven is pressing down second heaven. And all the shaking, upheavals, persecutions, do you hear me? There is persecutions, and those who want to follow God, that will be the mark. People will mock at you, people will laugh at you, but you will nevertheless demonstrate kingdom. The kingdom message will be ridiculed. Christians will be ridiculed, but we will come out even stronger with the demonstration of the kingdom. So the issue is, how do we do that? It's really with your voice. What is your voice? How would you let it out? How would you let it come out? Because it is already within our human spirit. It's just we have to allow it to be unleashed. Okay, so I want to just finish off today by talking about the Reformation, okay? And there is a Reformation that is coming. See, we are going through two major spiritual reformation in the history of the church. Because we had the Old Covenant and then the first Reformation. Jesus came to earth. God as flesh. Jesus ushered into the era of kingdom. That's why sometimes it's very strange, Some people are like, oh, how come you talk about kingdom now? People who are against the apostolic prophetic, they say, you are kingdom now people. So what are you talking about? Jesus is about kingdom, okay? Jesus already ushered the kingdom. The kingdom is not future, it's now. It was then and now and the future. So those people who are waiting for rapture, who are you? Some of you are, thankfully we have reformed former rapture wannabe, okay? And so that's not us, because Jesus already ushered in the kingdom. The gospel of kingdom has the power to change and shift nations. Even the early church did that. The church of Ephesus, everyone, the fourth largest city in Europe at that time, everyone in Asia Minor heard the gospel. We can't even say everyone in Petaling Jaya heard the gospel, right? We can't even say everyone in Cebu heard the gospel, right? So it has the power to push devil to his destruction and kick him back to his lair in hell. So that's the first Reformation. Then we know history. After 300 years, we gave in to the spirit of fear. We gave in to the spirit of doubt, and the church went flat for 1,000 years, remember? Then God has to initiate a second Reformation. And it's 500 years of restoration of truth. the ecclesia is being reformed from its pagan identity. Because you realize what happened with the Roman Catholic Church, the one Constantine established, is that it shifted the ecclesia into paganism. All kind of idol worship. So, in a similar sense, the Second Reformation is about moving out from Egypt. It's about living. And that's why sometimes we say, look, there is a lot of false teaching. The pastoral gift is important, but it's not the leadership gift. And people say, oh, how can you be so bad? How can you be so bad? That is pagan teaching. That is a teaching based on priesthood, a false priesthood. That is an Egyptian teaching. So that's why Passover is so important. It's that we have to move out from there and begin to step into kingdom posture. You know what is kingdom posture? It's the way you stand. It's the way you present yourself. Do you look like kingdom or do you look like the world? So many gatherings are like the world, right? They're like, oh, we cannot do this. Please don't teach Roman 1. Don't talk about homosexuality. Don't talk about abortion. It's like, what kind of church is that? You are a pagan church. You are a world church. And this is a time the Lord is saying, we will use our voice to call them up, to call out the false fruits of the pagan church. But that's not the final reformation, by the way. There's the third one. And Bishop Bill Hammond, he wrote the book called The Third and Final Reformation. I think we still have some copies here. That is a very interesting but challenging book to read. Okay, most people read it, they're like, feel a bit dizzy. Okay, but he said the third and final reformation is a time where the kingdom of heaven will fully express itself on earth. How will it look like? And it's in Revelation 11:15. The kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of His Christ. What did he say? Kingdom of the world become God's kingdom. But it's not like paradise. It's not like utopia. It's not that kind of thing. Because some people look at this and oh, everything will be good. No, there will still be fighting. There will still be battle and things like that. But this is a time where the kingdom of God will have so much influence all around the world. We are preparing and ushering for the completion of end time with the second coming of Jesus. That's why people with the rapture mentality is like, God will do it. Rapture mentality is like this. God, you do it. So it's like, I sit there, I goyang kaki, God, you do it. We are waiting for God to complete the task. But in reality, God expects us to do it. I mean, you look at history. Whenever man failed to do something, what happened? The destructions happened because God has given stewardship of earth to man. He has given dominion to Adam. And the descendants of Adam are still on earth today. Are you descendants of Adam? Yeah, you better be. So it's like, God, that covenant, that dominion mandate is still there. So when Jesus comes, He basically reconfirmed what God said to Adam in Genesis 1:28. Be fruitful and have dominion. Same. And Jesus said, go and make disciples of all nations, teaching them all that I taught you, and baptize them, by the way. And so that's the thing. It's the same thing. God expects us to do it. So even in Revelation 11:15, if you continue to read, you know that the warfare did not end. It's still a lot of fighting. But finally, the kingdom has that sort of influence. So I just want to finish off by showing you the characteristic of the third reformation. How will it look like? And we are not there yet. We're in the process. But these are the things that we can look for, especially in this Passover season. The first thing is we will see true reformers across the spheres of the kingdom. So when we think about the word reformers, we think about Luther, we think about we think about people like Joseph, like Daniel, that they really shifted the arena. Now, reformers are people in the kingdom. They are not the same as Cyrus, okay? Cyrus are those who support from outside. So for example, people like Lincoln and Churchill, people like Trump, like that, they are the Cyrus. They are from the outside. But God is not talking about that. He's talking about the reformers within the ecclesia. And it will be across the sphere. You look at Malaysia today. We need reformers everywhere, right? Look at education mountain. Look at business mountain. Look at entertainment mountain. Look at the government mountain. It's like, just burning, and very, very dizzy. So when we see true reformers, it will be a sign that we are approaching the completion of the third reformation. Then the faith that they will have We'll be like Caleb and Joshua. So coming back to the theme again. Because Caleb and Joshua, you know what? They have unreasonable faith. But it's unreasonable in the eyes of the 10 other spies, but it is perfectly reasonable in the eyes of God. Their faith is not by sight. Their faith is really in the spirit. They saw it. It's like David, right? Remember David when he saw Goliath, very interestingly also facing the Nephilim. And he was like, who are you? Who dare to challenge Israel? Because he has seen in the spirit what God can do. So that's the thing. Faith like Caleb and Joshua. I know it's very easy to say, but try to read what Caleb did again. He was 85 years old. And he was like still wanting the inheritance. And he's like, look, who wants to fight with me? Can become part of my family. Can become the 亲家, you say, right? Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty decent reward. Truly possessing our inheritance. I know some of us, we have been possessing some of our inheritance, but we have not truly possessed. Truly possessed means really possessed in a major way. And finally, when we're in a stage of third reformation, what we'll see is kingdom expression everywhere. So that's why in the early church, around 100 AD, the historians are saying, at that time they just began, they haven't even used the word Christians very widely yet. You know what they call them? The people of the way. The people of the way are everywhere. They are like ants. They are like, whatever insects you want to call them. It's like they're everywhere. So that's the thing. We will reach a stage where kingdom expression is everywhere. And it's like, if people have trouble, go and look for him. Go and look for Mark. Go and look for Joel. They can do healing. They can give you solution or whatever. It's like so common. No need to be so covert already. And that will be the characteristic of the third and final reformation. So really in this month of Adar, I just want to encourage everyone. We are stepping into the Passover month. It is a time of decisions. And I know some of us, we are a bit discouraged. We are a bit down by what's been happening in the past few months. But let me just say that this is the time for us to pick ourselves up. It's like don't remain in that sluggishness forever. Just make a decision and say, I am going to advance. I will cross over. I mean, just imagine this. If you don't do it, do you want to go back to another cycle of wilderness, or do you want to go into the promised land? Okay, so that's it for now.